Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still T Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is still your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am T Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today we are discussing the Breitling. If you're going to get an Omega, get a Speedmaster Professional. If you're going to get a Rolex, get a Sub. JLC is all about the Reverso, the icon, the franchise player, if you want to use sports terminology at Breitling, is the Navitimer. Since either 1952 or 1954, depending on who you believe, it is one of the longest running continuously produced chronographs and the original full-featured flight computer. So more on that in a moment. Let's talk about this chronograph in terms of dimension. Steel and rose gold, 43 millimeters in diameter, 14.4 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, Breitling is making good on its promise to build easier watches to wear. 48.9 millimeters from tip to tip with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Not long ago, a decade ago, Breitling lugs would have had a huge wingspan, making the watch difficult to wear on a smaller wrist. And yet here we go, 43 millimeters on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. This wears quite nicely. It's not out over the edges of my wrist. I can really recommend this for a wrist my size or larger. If your wrist is 15 centimeters circumference, but it's flat across the top, that might also work. It's not a thin watch, but it's not oppressively thick. It does have a little bit of an outcropping or overhang to the bezel. So let's say this will fit underneath a jacket cuff, but maybe not the tightest of shirt sleeves. Breitling straps always feel weirdly deluxe, like they were spec'd for a watch 2 price classes higher. So instead of a standard calfskin aviator strap here, we have large rectangular scale, symmetrical scale alligator leather. Not just gator where you'd expect calf, but a really expensive cut of gator. It's gloss finished. It's really thick cut. It's stuffed to give it some volume. That's called bolstering. There is a contrasting stitch that is aviator style. And then we have an edge that's shear cut to show you those thick layers of leather. On the bottom, a buttery calfskin. And you'll note that this is a crimping system, so there's no holes in this strap. The idea being that this Breitling factory strap is crimped by the deploying clasp. So what happens is it actually slides through, it tucks in, it tucks under, there's a retaining system below, and then all the excess length gets tucked underneath the opposite side of the strap. So there's no need for minder loops. It creates a very clean aesthetic. And with a full clasp, you're not likely to drop your watch while donning or removing at bedside. That is the whole point of using a deployant clasp. It is harder to drop your watch. The year the company was founded, the Breitling logo with wings, and actually this is a somewhat older Breitling logo. The clasp was likely made before the watch because recently Breitling has removed the wings from its logo. They want you to think of Breitling as a land, sea, and air sports company, not just air. The Navitimer case has not changed much since it was a specially built piece for the AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, in the 50s. Like a lot of heritage designs or re-editions, it is a very narrow mid-case, and you can actually see the case back is stepped in somewhat, so when it's on the wrist, it actually reads a little bit thinner than it is by nestling down. Has minimal beveling, squared off lug ends. Again, all these elements are evocative of really a vintage watch. We have pump-style pushers, very true to history, a Breitling B on the crown. This is a 30-meter water-resistant case, which is pretty standard for a pilot's watch. You can see that the knurling of the bezel makes it easy to grip, and then we've got a combination of a satin-finished, media-blasted recesses, and the outer surfaces are polished. Now, it really glides quite nicely, as though it's on a Teflon Norglide bearing. So this is a calculator bezel. So you have this logarithmic scale. I believe Mimo Loga was first with this idea, followed by Breitling's Chronomat in the early 40s, followed in the 50s by the Navitimer, and the Navitimer was a little bit more sophisticated. Now, this doesn't have every scale you'd expect on a full-size slide rule, but it is ideal for multiplication and division, and it's easy to use. You have a couple of different units, so you can see meters expressed, also nautical versus statute miles. The idea here is that you can calculate rates quite easily: rate of climb, rate of drift, airspeed, ground speed, fuel consumption, those sort of things. And it works pretty easily. It's a simple thing to understand. So, for example, let's say I want to divide 8 by 4. It works like a fraction. I take 8 put it over 4. You got to keep the decimals in mind because this could be 80 divided by 4. It could be 80 divided by 40. It could be 80 divided by 0.4. So you got to keep your decimals in mind. But yeah, let's say 8 divided by 4, and then we go to the index, which is this little 10 on the inner scale. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now let's say we want to multiply something. Let's say I want to multiply 15 by 3. Well, I'm going to put the number to be multiplied over the index. And that's pretty simple. Now I'm going to find 3. Simple enough. 3 on the inner scale. 15 multiplied by 3 is 45. Easy to do. You'll learn to outpace your friends with their smartphones as you calculate the tips at restaurants after the meal. Now, of course, there's a lot to love here artistically. We have a nice series of tones, textures, colors, and focal planes. It's a dial with really nice depth, primarily because of that dished scale outboard. But then we've got an anthracite center or ardoise, a sunburst metallic with a graining, a soft silver satin. One might call it opaline for the rotating scale. We have silver on anthracite printing. We have rose gold plated hands, logo, and indices. So more upscale than a vintage Navitimer, which would have had only printed features. We do have a very subtle tone-on-tone dial with the registers being black and the dial being anthracite. We have a nice faceted stepped down window for the date disc, and I appreciate that it's not just a sheer cut through the dial. That little step adds elegance. We've got a Breitling anchor and B logo counterweight to the red varnished chronograph seconds hand. We have chronograph minutes up to 30. We have running seconds. We have chronograph hours. And you can see right here that the Breitling B01 movement is a semi-instantaneous jump. We have a couple of expected features on a modern movement, including hacking or stop seconds. Semi-instantaneous date change right there. And then we have a quick set system so you can rapidly cycle the date. One faux pas, perhaps. You can see there's a couple of different fonts going on here. We've got this 3. We've got this 3. And we've got this 3. And that's at least 3 different 3s. Shakespeare would love it. But that is one oversight by Breitling's designers. And that's okay, because the best watches always have some kind of flaw. Now, as I mentioned, modern movement inside B01. So we've got a column wheel with a super crisp actuation. And you can see the column wheel is visible, along with Longa, Rolex, and Zenith with the El Primero series. This is one of the best feeling and sounding column wheel actions I've encountered. Now, we also have vertical clutch engagement. So the column wheel cycles the functions. The vertical clutch actually engages the chronograph drivetrain to the time-telling drivetrain. So notice when I push the crown, I push the pump pusher, there's no jump to the chronograph seconds hand. Unlike a lateral clutch, vertical clutch has no play or imprecision. And unlike a lateral clutch, you can leave a vertical clutch running full time with no additional wear and tear to the watch. Taking a quick look at the back, B01 came out in 2009, originally on the Chronomats. It was not designed to be seen, but it turned out to be a nicely sized movement for large watches like Breitling makes, and a good looking movement, especially by the standards of a vertical clutch automatic. They're not always handsome. So good to look at, automatic winding, 70-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, 47 joules, vertical clutch, column wheel, stop seconds with a quick set date, and the 5-position adjustment is attached to a COSC Swiss chronometer certification. So about 2 weeks of testing, 5 positions, different temperatures, and there are both limits to how much can vary in total over 24 hours, as well as limits to how big the total delta can be in a given period. So this is a exhaustively tested movement. Only about 1% of Swiss-made movements are chronometer certified. And though the finishing is machine finished, it is handsome and attractive. This is actually a worthwhile display case back. If you love this watch, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. That is Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.